Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live on CGTN. The second edition of Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation is just around the corner. Representatives from over 100 countries, including about 40 government leaders, as well as those from international organizations, are set to attend. In Asia, the Belt and Road Initiative is seen as the main driver for infrastructure construction in a region that must bridge the ever-growing gap between its economic potential and the realities of its insufficient infrastructure. From Sri Lanka and the Maldives to Pakistan, the projects already in place show concrete results of the initiative. True to its global status and inclusive nature, the Belt and Road Initiative is fulfilling its mission: regional development and international integration. And for more on how BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, might bring new consensus to the Asian nations, we're joined in our studio. In the middle, we have Jamshid Choksi, chairperson from the Department of Central Eurasian Studies from Indiana University, from originally Bloomington. Good to see you, Professor.
Hello.
Also joining us here in the studio, we have Kitty Prasarsuk. I hope I pronounced your name right, sir. Vice Rector for International Affairs at the Thammasat University. Welcome. Last but not least, Professor Wang Solao, Associate Professor of School of International Studies from Peking University. Professor, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay, now, Asia, as diverse as it is, all needs a momentum, united momentum possibly, to develop for the future. What about in Central Asia? That used to be a place where turbulences of wars and also the leftovers of the Cold War still there.
And as China moves across Central Asia with this initiative, it is indeed something that we're going to watch very carefully to see how China manages it. Because it is important to remember that the stance already had a long period of subjugation to the Russians, then the Soviet Union, and even now, independent though they may be, there are massive economic differences between China and the stance. They're light years away.
Who are you talking about specifically?
So whether we are talking about Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, even if you go all the way across the Caspian to Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan may have oil wealth, but in terms of economic development, in terms of social development, in terms of whether it's healthcare, education, there are light years of differences between China and these places.
As complicated as it is in Central Asia, so are Southeast Asian countries. You have some of the least developed economies in the world. You also have, of course, things like Thailand and also like Singapore at very different development stage. So how can these countries be able to consensus in a way, work on the Belt and Road Initiative, even though different economies and different governments have different views?
ASEAN has put forward for connectivities since 2010.
Yes.
So I think we're still working on that. We have master plan for ASEAN connectivities, but unfortunately, ASEAN themselves cannot achieve the dream of connectivity. We need outside help, and I think BRI fit very well in this context, so that ASEAN highly hope in the BRI to help develop infrastructure, which is badly needed in many countries in ASEAN.
Professor, of course, Thailand, your home country, is the host for this year's ASEAN economies. But the question really is, can these countries come to consensus? Because ASEAN, when working together, you need to have a consensus in order to incorporate the outside support. So that is the issue. Or you think this better practice work bilaterally rather than multilaterally through ASEAN?
I think in BRI, it's not multilateral. So far, it has been done bilaterally. With negotiation, always bilateral. So China and Laos negotiation about trade.
Yes.
And Thailand, China negotiation about trade, different. I mean, we gone through different process. So therefore, BRI, not multilateral.
So in your understanding, China, Thailand, about trade, for example, on the BRI issue, Thailand has been also a country in transition over the years. So What do you consider as some of the biggest challenges? Do you think what kind of ways will be able to address that?
Well, I think on the trend project, Thailand and China have to go through 18 rounds, as many as 18 rounds of negotiation until they reach a conclusion of only a mere 3.5 kilometer train lines, which is a little bit disappointing. So I think both sides need to adjust, getting to know each other.
Efficiency.
The way to work, the way to negotiate. How we work is different. I mean, different perceptions in terms of how to carry on a project. For example, China, they like to go ahead very fast, and they can adjust along the way. But for Thai government, they cannot. They have to have everything completed as a plan, and then we go ahead.
Yeah.
So something different.
Very different approach.
Different
Communication as a result is extremely difficult. Communication is not just what we say to each other, but rather how we do it and how we can show to the other side the commitment and the different practices.
And I think that you hit the nail on the head here, because when you're looking at Central Asia, and then when we go even further, let's say even before we come to Iran, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Afghanistan, these are countries that have experienced a lot of turbulence. So they need to feel secure in these new developments. They need to feel that as the developments occur, that they are equal partners. Because they are very used to the great disparities, let's say, between the Soviet Union and them, or America and them. So having this sense of them feeling a sense of security that they are being consulted, that it is a two-way street and a win-win, I think will make a very large difference in terms of not just the words, but the actual deeds being recognized as beneficial to everyone involved.
Right.
And if this is to succeed, that's perhaps the most important.
Professor Choksi, if you look at history, usually a rising power is working with the others through only what's left after a war. But certainly now things have been changing. People do not want to have any war or turbulence. So things have to change, and learning curve has to be done without the earlier circumstances.
And
so
that's
that is the challenge here.
Yes, that is indeed the challenge. And what I would say is that as China approaches this, China should both learn from the mistakes of the West, but also learn from the successes of the West.
What do you think are those?
So the
Simply
mistakes would be things that happened, let's say the Great War on Terror, and the devastation it caused. So the success, the one that the Belt Road is always compared to, is the Marshall Plan.
And it is not the Marshall Plan.
Yeah, it's not the Marshall Plan, but the Marshall Plan succeeded for Western Europe, whereas the Soviet Union in Eastern Europe was a disaster. And so the lessons of how the Marshall Plan worked and how it made Europe stable is something I think that China should look at. And at the same time, look and see, because one of the things that China is going to experience is, so far, the engagement has been limited. What happens as the initiative starts succeeding and China has more and more investment, not just economic, but on the ground footprint? When challenges occur to that, how does China react? And that is when China may have to show restraint.
These are very interesting and important points, by the way. And Professor Wang, of course, I know you are an expert in the Middle East studies. And in China, of course, there are many who have different expertise. You are coming from that side. The Middle East, the same thing. Those countries have been experiencing very different, shall we say, the past few decades compared to a lot of the other economies in the world. And now, of course, geopolitically, things are getting ever more complicated with the relations between Israel and the United States changing, and the Trump administration's current policy choices in the Middle East. So about that, how is China going to incorporate all of these dramatic changes as Professor Chomsky earlier mentioned, to learn from the earlier experiences and lessons? Those are very interesting combinations.
Yes, that's true. Middle East is always a problematic area. For many countries, many big powers, they made mistakes, just as Professor Chomsky mentioned before. My point is, China should be careful when you engage in these countries. Our policy, I think, is now to try to promote economic interest, because economic growth it's a common thing for any country. Whatever you have, you are rich in energy, you are poor in energy. Whatever you are well developed or you are poor developed. You know, even the countries Saudi Arabia, UAE, or the country like Tunisia, Egypt, they all want to promote their economic growth.
From Thailand's perspective, let's just put it that way as an example, how is the country making its own choices? Do you feel like being forced to stay in one line or the other? It's the same thing also with China, for example, with China-US relations now still hanging in the air. We do not know the nature of the relations for the future. How is a country like Thailand making its choices?
Well, I think Thailand does not make any choice.
That's always a smart answer, isn't it?
We tend to be good friends with any country, particularly major powers.
Sometimes you are being chosen to stand in one line or the other by pressure. What are you gonna do?
As you know, we had a military coup in 2014, and that we got a lot of pressure from the West, particularly the United States under Obama administrations. And Thailand was pretty much leaning closer to China. 2014, 15, 16. But once Trump came to power, it's quite a mixed blessing for Thailand. So Trump did not pay attention much to democracy, human rights. So we came to develop close relation with the US back again. But that's the general stance of Thai government. Any government, even military government or civilian government, we tend to make friends with major powers.
Yes.
China, Japan, US, India, Australia. So we are good friends with all of them. And in fact, for the train project, we give the train line, northeastern line to China, another line, the north-south line, probably go to Japan. That is geopolitics decision.
There's always one issue that we haven't been able to tackle. That is, whether we are going in very different directions. We see recently the ideological debate in the world about what kind of world we want, we aspire to achieve together. Is it more multilateral or is it more unilateral? Is it more protectionism or is it more free trade? Of course, different people, different countries have different interpretations about it, but having a concerted consensus would bring us more strength. But the question really is whether we have that consensus or not, and what is the role, for example, of ASEAN countries in this regard, Professor Kitty?
In fact, I think ASEAN should play more role in terms of to maintain liberal order in terms of trade regime. In fact, RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership among the 10 ASEAN countries plus the 6 countries, China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, India, that has been negotiated for so long, and the deadline has been keep postponing for the past 3 or 4 years.
But I heard that it's been speeding up recently.
Yeah, we should. I think under the leadership of ASEAN and also China, Japan, and major countries, we should accelerate the process to show the world that we need to go for multilateralism, we need to go for a fair trade rather than protectionism.
And how will that, since we talk about the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, be able to work with those different mechanisms? And of course, BRI is only part of the picture, it's not the whole picture.
Well, I think overall, I think economic development is a key point here in Asia overall. And that's why many countries, all the countries in Asia, except Japan, they are very eager to join the AIIB, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. So that's why we really need infrastructure. So I think BRI can make it be in the picture that it can help stir economic development in the region.
And it's not just about economic development, it's also about the connectivity as a whole that BRI aspire at least to achieve. From your perspective, Professor Choksi, of course that is extremely important for Central Asia.
They're extremely important for Central Asia and across, like I said, across parts of the Middle East. We have seen both those areas as areas of conflict. But now, what Belt Road can do is perhaps by changing the economics and making local opportunities available, it could perhaps help resolve some of the conflicts within the countries and across borders. So that can be one great, shall we say, benefit coming out of it. Remember, the world was sort of moving, we thought, towards multilateral, free trade and all the rest. And we've seen within just the last few years, all the old tendencies come back up. And so one thing that China can do in terms of leadership is to provide a leadership that says, no, we can work together, we can go forward, it can indeed benefit the globe.
Right. Professor Wang, before we go, also some input from you as well. Belt and Road Initiative, as all of you know it sophisticatedly, it's not just about China.
Yes.
It's about building a platform with partners around the world so that everyone on that platform would be becoming a part of the so-called win-win-win-win situation in a way. But that takes a lot of political wisdom.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of nuances on the ground in order to achieve that. Now, Professor Wang, your thought about this quite a winding road in a way.
So by using the official concept by our Foreign Minister Wang Yi, he publicly said that BIR is a public good. That means China contribute to the world to benefit all over the world, not only China. To go back to the Middle East, China, this is a geopolitical conflict area. China always takes the side of peace, stability, and political resolution. China always opposes war, conflict. I think this is not only ideology, but also value of China.
Right. A lot of things are easier said than done. We all know that on the ground, things are changing as we talk. But certainly with a concerted goal of making it a peaceful evolvement in our world, we hopefully will be able to achieve more than we did before. For now, I want to thank the three of you for joining us on this discussion, Professor Choksi, Professor Kitty, and Professor Wang. Thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.